you. Welcome to this week's Blockchain Gaming News Roundup with me, Jenny Jordan and John Jordan. Today is Friday, the 18th of July, and we're going to start off by talking AI. Two big news this week in terms of, not full pivot to AI. We know that Saga Origin it's a company that's been sort of developing a platform and had extensive collaborations with partner companies on the AI front for a while. They have announced their KEX AI platform in collaboration with German company, I think it is, Chrono Labs. Although I did look it up and I could only find a Swiss company called Chrono Labs. So I don't know if it's Swiss, German, whichever. Anyway. So that it's kind of a UGC platform as well, because people will be able to make their own AI agents that they can then kind of monetize and use either in gaming, sort of as autonomous AI agents in games, or kind of more in the DeFi sector, use agents that can kind of independently do on-chain transactions and such. But the other one, kind of more interesting, is Delabs Games, South Korean Web3 game developer, sprung out of 433. Jun Mo Kwon is the CEO, which in itself is sort of sprung out of Nexon, and Planetarium. They've gone together and announced this kind of joint verse 8, and Delabs have also onboarded Planetarium CEO JC Kim as kind of co-CEO. So I guess the big question there is that you've asked, John, is kind of why are they not just merging? They seem to be kind of very closely knit. Also interesting is obviously that Delabs started out with this kind of PC, quite ambitious kind of PC game. I always keep forgetting what it's called, like a lawnmower racing, Rumble Racing.
Rumble Racing.
Yeah, that's right. And they announced last year that they were going to pivot to make more midcore kind of games for Telegram and kind of easier accessible platforms. And they have seen a big success with the boxing. Again, what's that one called?
Boxing Star.
On Line Messenger, and it's also available on Telegram, but it's sort of done better online. And now they've also got this Ragnarok Libre coming out. They have had like a lot of signups pre-registered for that. So now this comes as a bit of a surprise that they're kind of looking at AI and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was a long intro. Your turn now.
Well, I guess on the subject of AI, the first thing I would say, welcome back. So last week you weren't very well, so I had to use AI as my AI host sidekick, which was sort of an interesting experiment, but did just take forever to do. And people who listened right to the end of the podcast last week, it was really weird where there's a female voice, and then it suddenly just did a glitch and changed to a male voice with that. So I just left that glitch in. I thought it was quite funny. But anyway, so good to have you back. So the AI stuff, it's all sort of kicked off at the end of last year, 2024, and all these sort of AI tokens started launching, and we got the first sort of wrappers around sort of ChatGPT chatbots and stuff, and that really kicked off, but only for like a month or so, and money was made and money was lost, and then it sort of went quiet for a little bit, and now I guess we're seeing the outflow of people actually doing the work, the proper work, rather than just launching a meme coin based around some AI agent, which is what we had in the past. So that's good. I mean, it's still the case that there's no real adoption of any of this sort of stuff yet. And even the one you mentioned, the Saga Chrono Labs one, I had a quick look at it, and that's, I mean, it's not. You can do some stuff, but basically you're just doing the very basic sort of creating an agent by putting in a sort of, you create you have to put in a story and it creates something for you. So the things aren't live yet. I mean, to a degree, what they're doing is a launch pad. So we've seen that quite a lot of Virtual's original one is a launch pad, and they've launched their sort of Virtuals 2, which is much more about sort of AI agents. And as you say, one of the big things lots of people are looking at is allowing them to do on-chain DeFi stuff. So that, I'm not sure any of that is quite live yet. I know another big company in the space is going to be announcing something pretty soon, sort of similar, very DeFi focused sort of AI agents. The Saga is interesting because Saga is this sort of they call it the L1 to launch L1s. That was their original sort of idea for that project, which hasn't really come to fruition. But now they've sort of, because they have this ability to just create lots of L1s using their tech, which I think is quite good. Although obviously I'm not technical to know that. They've sort of switched that to now you can sort of run AIs on that. So that's the next thing they're doing. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. The Delabs thing, again, as you say, is sort of funny because they started out with this we're making AAA PC, maybe not AAA, but we're making, big PC games, and they did this sort of kart racing one, and they had this alien shooter one, and there was another one, like a really weird RPG. There was a mobile one that I played in beta. Yeah, and that was quite interesting, but totally bonkers. I mean, like totally bonkers. I mean, way out there. And they stopped all that, moved to Telegram. I did actually do a bit of research on 433, as you say, is the sort of parent company for Delabs Games, both South Korean, and actually Line is one of the big investors into 433 Games. So 433 Games itself doesn't do Web3 games; it does Web2 games, mainly mobile games. Had some pretty big successes. Maybe not so much at the moment, which is I think why Delabs sort of founded to look at Web3 but. In some ways, it's sort of like, you look at it as is it a feature or a bug that they've sort of in some ways wasted money building these games that they haven't launched, but equally they've not thrown bad money after good by continuing to develop these games when they know that's not going to work. So they've sort of been, I guess everyone can always be quicker in these sort of strategic changes, but they've been fairly quick in like, right, we're stopping that and we're moving on to this. And I think, to be honest to them, this new AI agent thing, it does still play into we're launching games on Telegram and Line because I think that's the platform they've decided they want to make games on, and the fact this AI agent stuff is a sort of separate way of making games. I think they still want to deploy them on Line and Telegram. So I think it's a sort of the AI stuff isn't a pivot; it's sort of like a modification. As you say, the slightly weird thing is this platform they're using is called Verse 8, and that's been developed by JC Kim, who's the CEO of Planetarium Games, who've been around for a long time. They did one of the first fully on-chain games, Nine Chronicles, which is still going. They've done this other game on Immutable, Immortal Rising 2, which has not been terribly successful. But they're a sort of team who are fairly well funded and just experimenting with loads of stuff. And so the sort of story is, if you listen to the sort of the spaces they did, was the CEO of Delabs knows JC Kim really well. JC Kim actually invested in Delabs at the beginning, and so they're just talking about stuff. And then so when JC Kim showed him this AI tool, which again is sort of, you can go to the website, nothing live yet, but it is a text-based game maker. So we're starting to see a few of these things now. Remix GG is another one where you basically type in, make me a Space Invader game where the Space Invaders are hippopotamuses and they fire bananas at each other. You type something in, and the genAI tries to make something, and generally those are sort of fun, but not, obviously not deep gameplay. Obviously, as the AIs get better, you can sort of get better things in them. So this Versus 8 thing, it does let you do 3D games. I mean, not a very high visual quality, but it's a certain level of 3D. And the other thing they're talking about is it has a big multiplayer. So previously, these genAI games have been like hyper casual mobile games, like single player, really sort of fun, memey, sort of mimetic. If anything sort of comes up, you can make one with Donald Trump's hand being bruised or something, whatever the big thing is at the moment. But these ones, now you can do that with multiplayer. Obviously, multiplayer is much more sticky. And then the Web3 bit is you can basically, it's not very clear, but they sort of say you can have these in-game economies. So you assume you can create items that will be NFTs, and then you can sell them. So the idea is now you can sort of monetize that. If any of those games become sort of successful in any way, you have all the bits in. You have the multiplayer to sort of go viral on the social side, and you have the ability to have an economy. Now, it's not to say most of those games will be successful or viral, but you can, if you want a game to be successful and viral in a more sustained way than a normal hyper-casual game, then you need these other elements. So we'll see what plays out. As you say, it's a bit confusing. I think if we're in the West, like Planetarium and Delabs would probably just merge, where they've done this sort of weird thing where the CEO of one is now the co-CEO of the other one. and he's an investor in that one. And it may be more complicated because Delabs is owned by 433, and 433's main investors are Tencent and Line. The CEO is still, I think, the majority shareholder, but obviously when you start to have these big global companies involved, you can't just go, oh yeah, I'm just going to merge with my mate down the road who I've just met. So they may be sort of going through the lawyer process to do that, or they may just want to sort of wait to see how it goes, if it's successful or not. But yeah, I mean, if we think this genAI stuff is going to be, most people think it is pretty important, but I guess we're still at that gap where we use ChatGPT, and that's sort of very interesting for us as individuals, but we've not really seen it productized yet, certainly in games, which may take longer than other industries. But you would expect at some point in the next year, you would expect to see something sort of useful coming out of this. So this is, I guess, another step down the line.
Yeah, definitely. Right, onwards then. So you would call it sort of a change in era in Web3 gaming. We've seen sort of similar things emerged recently, but I guess it's become sort of obvious now when Sky Mavis' Ronin ecosystem and Yield Guild Games network have both sort of decided to quite radically change their reward system, and it's moving more towards like the pixels kind of thinking of wanting to reward the users that are contributing to their ecosystems, and not kind of as Web3 gaming has done for years now, kind of reward just anybody, and particularly obviously extractive bots ending up sort of in favor. So why would you say this is happening now, and why is this kind of a sign of more of a deeper sentiment change?
Well, like many things that happen, is sort of actually the question maybe is why has this gone on for so long, rather than why is it happening now? I suppose if you think sort of like certainly sort of late 2021 was the explosion in play to earn. Clearly, Sky Mavis and Axie Infinity were the driver of, and YGG, Your Good Gaming sort of were also sort of a prime mover, getting all these mainly Filipino, not mainly Filipinos, but a lot of Filipinos. That was the story, where Filipinos were basically getting a sort of a universal income by playing Axie Infinity, and that drove the whole Axie Infinity sort of bubble. But even since then, the idea of play to earn has taken a long time to die. I think because it's such a good idea that people like the idea that you can play games and earn money. And I think there are still people, obviously Luke Barbakowski at Pixels, who still firmly believes that as a model, because it's such a strong sort of economic, psychological model for us as players. The refinement is happening is how what is the play and what is the earn. So I guess what we've seen over the years is there's been a tightening of that funnel. So they've become, previously you just sort of logged it, you sort of clicked a button and you earned. That was sort of the complexity of the model. So obviously tons of people did that because it was easy to do, and tons of bots did it because you could create bots to do that. What's been happening is it's become more there's been more complexity about what the play, what the interaction with the game or the app or whatever it is actually is. So you have to do more complicated things, more hoops to jump through, and those over time are being better integrated into sort of the gameplay loops of the game, rather than just click on this button to get a token, which is what it was. And then the earn bit equally is being tightened. So it may not be that sort of less tokens are being given out, or that probably has happened, but certainly there's been more focus on giving away more tokens to people who are doing more obviously positive things in the ecosystem. So as I say, we always talk about Pixels. Pixels is like by far and ahead of any other blockchain project that I've seen about this. They're onto their sort of third model of doing it, and you could say maybe not still being successful. And I think to a degree, this was the sort of the headline came about because YGG have had these things called guild advancement programs, and they've basically been sort of campaigns. And actually, they rebooted them sort of, I can't think of this time last year, where they were trying to make it as a protocol, and they were trying to get other guilds to sort of adopt their sort of earning schedule. So they were sort of saying what the play bit was and what the earn bit. So YGG was sort of trying to become this sort of meta layer for any guild or any organization who wanted to sort of plug into the rewards they were doing. I don't think that's worked. I mean, I think the other clear thing for both Sky Mavis on Ronin and YGG is their token price is down. Everyone's token price is down pretty much, apart from Pudgy Penguins, which we may mention at the end. So I think let's have a look. Yield Guild's down 65% this year, and RON tokens down 76% this year. So that's pretty poor, and but they have lots of runways. They're not going bust, so they really need to sort of take a grip on the emissions of tokens, which particularly because people are selling them. So even if they were tighter on the rewards, the token price wouldn't be going up, but it might be going down a little bit less. And so they have to sort of think seriously about that. So it's a bigger issue, I think, for YGG, because YGG have been about being open and making a really big community and giving out loads of stuff. So obviously, if you give out less stuff, you have less players, as we've seen with Pixels. You go from 1 million to 50,000 at the moment, whatever daily wallets. So it's not like it.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as a reason. Do you think that's a fact that it's not happened sooner? That those ecosystems have been scared of losing too many users too quickly, and that will look bad, sort of on the stats.
Yes, I think, and it's even the case with Sky Mavis at the moment. They're giving away quite a lot of tokens for Axie, because Axie's around about 100,000, and that seems to be like a nice number for them. And if they didn't have that, the whole Ronin blockchain would be pretty low on users. So to a degree, you sort of you want to show there's some level of activity on your chain, and you can't sort of let it go. You can't let it go to its actual natural level if you weren't giving away stuff. And sort of one of the points about crypto is still a little bit about airdrops, and even though that's come off a lot, that is one of the things people are expect. So you have to sort of find the sweet spot you have for your sort of project there. And Pixels obviously is sort of being quite radical. It's moving. It's not. I'm going to say it's leaving the game behind, but it's much more moving away from its individual game to a sort of a staking ecosystem around it, which brings in lots of other games. So it's harder for maybe something like Ronin. Obviously, is a blockchain, and it has to sort of to a degree maintain some sort of level of usage. If it's only got 100 users, then as a blockchain, then clearly no one's going to. That's existential because no one's going to launch a game on that. So they have so Sky Mavis and YGG have sort of different outcomes they have to deal with. And obviously for YGG having had this reputation for giving away a lot of stuff, it changing this model is causing a certain amount of disquiet. So obviously, the community, as soon as you make it harder to earn less, your community, you find how strong your community is, because a lot of people that were in it for the money, of course. So they have to sort of work that stuff out. But just in terms of token prices being down, for so long. I mean, this year they're down, but last year they were down as well. So suddenly, obviously they're down massively from all-time highs. They're never going to get back to that. So at some point, some level of financial rigor has to come in. And the thing I like about the pixel staking thing is that the games that go on that pixel staking ecosystem, there's only 4 at the moment, are games that are to some degree actually generating revenue. So those are games every month. They may not be profitable, but people are spending tokens to play those games. So they have some sort of revenue, and that's sort of how you get into that staking system, because then you're getting some of the rewards from Pixels, and so you're trying to do a flywheel around that. And as Lucas said, we'd like to have lots of games in this staking ecosystem, but amazingly, not many games actually do sustained revenue. You can do revenue for a period of time when you've got like a special token airdrop thing or a special event happening, but then once that event finishes, then everyone goes away. So that's sort of the struggle for the whole industry, and so everyone's looking at similar sort of issues, I suppose.
Right then. Let's move on. Key question of the week. Have you set your tactics in Soccerverse? Right, the season 2 begins tomorrow. Soccerverse, fully on-chain football game, launched in January this year. Now into 7 months in, it's preparing for season 2 tomorrow.
Yep.
And let's just talk us through, really, what's been going on these first 7 months, and you're up to. I have set my tactics. I know I'm determined. I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna what's the word? Not relegate, the other way.
Promoted.
Promoted. That's the word.
Football expert.
I only missed out actually one spot away from being promoted this last season. So yeah.
Yes, you have a lovely Soccerverse hat on, so that's a good reminder. So obviously I'm heavily involved with Soccerverse as an advisor and such. But yeah, so it launched. It's a fully on-chain soccer management game, or soccer economy, really, running on Polygon blockchain. Launched in January. Every season lasts sort of 6 months. So that's sort of a fixed sort of situation. So the season ended at the end of or end of June, and then there's like a 2-week sort of gap before the next season starts. So people, one, because the game actually behind the scenes in the blockchain is actually quite complex. So every time the season rolls over, obviously, as you say, people get relegated and promoted. As well as that, everyone gets sort of payouts in the game for where their position in the league. And all the players, so I can't remember, there's 6,000 clubs, something like that. And I can't even remember, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of players. And they all get their rating updated. So the rating is based on sort of like, dribbling, shooting, goalkeeping sort of skills. That gives them an overall rating. And that's based on real world aspects as well. So if you were, say, playing for, I don't know, Sutton United in the real world, and then you got bought by Manchester United, then even as a player, even if your rating as a player hadn't gone up in terms of your stats, your rating would go up because you've moved from a club that's rated 50 to a club that's rated whatever you think Man United are rated at the moment, but it will be 90 something things. So there's been lots of stuff going on around there, and that's sort of interesting because obviously a football management game, a lot of the bread and two meat, or whatever, meat and two veg, is about managing the game. And you set your tactics, you choose which players, you set your substitutions, you can set, if I'm losing by 2 goals with 65 minutes to go, what changes you make. So you have that football management side of it. But because it's an economic sort of system as well, you have all the other stuff around it. So you have transfers. So there's been loads, very aggressive, or not very aggressive, very competitive transfer market at the moment. I've been trying to buy better players, and prices are through the roof. You have the ability actually to inject more money into your club, so you can buy better players. You have sort of the club has a manager, but the club also has what they call influence holders. So those are effectively like the board, and they can sack managers, vote them out. So you have managers being voted in and out all the time. And then you also have players, all the football players in the game can have agents, and the agents have a certain level of control. They can sort of change the morale of the player. So the agent can come in, tell the manager, I want to transfer to a bigger club. And you can, if the manager says no, then you can set the morale of the player down, which drops his stats. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're starting to see interesting rivalries. And, as I sort of said, though the game is technically about football, it's all about the players. You can just play it as a sort of a, like any of these things, like a PvP competitive game where some people are just have a arch enemy and they just want to do stuff to make that player's life a misery. I mean, I wouldn't recommend doing that, but in every game there are some people who do that, and equally there are some people who are really happy and friendly, and particularly there's an economic reason where if you have ownership, if you have influence in a club and that club does well, that gets promoted, then that club is worth more in the game. So you get more of the in-game token, and then you can do more things in the game. So there's equally another whole, I would say, more positive aspect where people are trying to get, like I've got a club at the moment where a new manager's just come in, and I've just this morning been saying, how are you going to get on? What's your ideas? And I'll pay you a bonus if you get promoted. And, so, I mean, it's not, it's not Facebook, but, there is that sort of social stuff going on as well. So it's pretty interesting, even if you don't like football. And the first season was pretty good, actually. So all these things are sort of slightly made up, but if you considered if you took all the clubs in the game and the price of sort of those clubs, their economic value in the game which is actually sort of like a fully diluted market cap for a token, which, as we all know, you have circulating market cap, which is, if you have 10% of your tokens circulating, then they're worth this many tokens times the price. But if you had all your tokens circulating, you'd have, a sort of, 10 times more, because 10% to 100%. So, but the size of it, even if the first season is like $340 million for all the clubs. I mean, there are a lot of clubs in the game, and clearly that's not a, you have to be a little bit careful. It's not like the game world is worth 340 million. But from a mathematical point of view, one season's got it to that level. So it is. There's a really sort of interesting competitive sort of aspect of these sort of players sort of playing. Which, as I say, I'm not like a massive. I don't play soccer management games at all. So, but this is interesting. I think the blockchain really does add something that that you wouldn't get from like a football management game. There are other online football management games. There's no other on-chain football management game where you're using real players. Should say these are real players, not there are other games that sort of just make up players and go, is Bob is worth 77 and Jack McJack is worth 15, and you can make games like that, but it's very hard to sort of get people excited about Bob McBob and Jack McJack. Whereas if you, in this case, someone's just bought Ronaldo for $17 million in the game, and everyone's like, oh, he's bought Ronaldo, and he's like a really low level team in the English league, so he's like looking to do this big sort of, from the bottom up sort of push. So he's sort of injected loads of money in his club, and he's bought Neymar, and that's sort of exciting. That's sort of the everyone can sort of see what's going on.
It really stands out as well as a game. In these days when a lot of games you would say have announced that they're shutting down or pivoting to Web 2 or whatever direction they're going, they haven't found a sustainable model to get their Web 3 game to work. But Soccerverse is. It's like you've said before, it's almost like a match made in heaven, blockchain and this game, management game, how sort of neatly it fits in Web3, and that shows because it is sustainable so far anyway. And yeah, I just like this is the game apart from NFL Rivals, so I'd say that I've played the longest. Or regularly and stuck with it, sort of thing. I like that it's not too time consuming. If you are going to be good and get into games these days, you have to. It feels like you have to spend 8 hours a day doing it. This is not that type of game. You check in a couple of days a week if you want to. You can check in every day if you're really sort of keen on the transfer market and seeing what's going on. But like you say, there are so many different variables going on in the game that you can basically pick and choose where you are going to put your attention.
Yeah, exactly. No, it is in some ways it's sort of like an idle game. You could just literally play the game. You have to sort of log in every 2 weeks to keep your sort of account active. But if you want to use the same tactics, you could not log in. You could log in once every 2 weeks to sort of see what's going on. Whereas equally, there are other players who are literally spending 8 hours a day building because it's sort of like it has a UGC platform. It's sort of a blockchain open source sort of stuff. So people are building these big sort of tooling, these websites that take in the data and letting you sort of sort through the cheapest player for this sort of price. And there are, really obsessive players who, and I may have to say to you, if you are going to get promoted this season, you might have to log in more than twice a week. But there we go. That's the challenge for you.
Yeah, no, good. Need to get more time somehow on my hands. Anyways, move on talking about Craft World, which is going live on Ronin on the 29th of July. So, just you talk about that. It's your sort of expertise.
Yep. Yeah, so they finished their Project Voyager sort of a play to airdrop campaign. So that is all being sort of calculated at the moment, what the Dino coins people will get, and those coins will be given to people on the 29th now, when the game, which has been running on a Polygon testnet, will now go live on the Ronin blockchain. So that's when you'll get your coins. I do actually have a podcast coming out with Oliver Loeffler that week. So I just spoke to him this week. There's some things in there I can't talk about now. There's nothing particularly sort of secret or amazing. As I've sort of said in the past, I don't think there's a lot of liquidity. The token is not be on DEX. Will be only on DEXs, not Binance or anything like that. So you won't really be able to settle it. The point of having those tokens is it gives you like a head start in the game when it goes live, and there'll be various, they have a roadmap for various limited edition events that are going to be happening, which is, I don't know what those are, but I just know they're happening. So that'll be pretty exciting. There'll be something to do, obviously straight away. And then we talked a little bit about this Dino Gotcha game that they're doing on, which is going back to what we started talking about. Sort of like, it's not an AI agent game, but they are these like a Tamagotchi online with its own wallet, and you have to take some resources from the game and feed your Dinogotchi. The whole theme of the thing is these sort of mad dinosaurs, angry dinos. So you have to. It's very humorous. You have to sort of feed those, and they might give you some sort of resource that then you use back in the game, and pretty experimental. I think Oliver is quite open that they're pretty happy with what they've got so far, but they're really not locked into what they're going to do. They want to have like a quite open ecosystem where they have some NFTs. I think they're going to do another NFT drop, or that people are rumoring that. I actually didn't mention that, so I don't know if that's happening, but there's rumors about another NFT drop. They have 2 NFTs out at the moment, and just sort of build it up like that. And I think, a bit like sort of Soccerverse as well. It's sort of fully on-chain game, but if you look at it as a game, it's not a 3D shooter with extraction elements, and hasn't cost them $100 million to make. They're a very small team, 11 people, I think. Same as Soccerverse, fairly small team, but they're very focused on what they're doing, and they're doing something you couldn't do. You didn't have the blockchain. It's not the most impressive experience. If you started playing that game, you wouldn't go, wow, I've never seen a game like this before. But when you get into it, you start to understand some of the functionality that blockchain gives in a sort of shared ecosystem, where you're particularly in a craft world, it's all about the resources you make, and they're looking to make it so you have to focus on a certain type of resource. At the moment, you have sort of earth resources, water and fire, and they're going to I think over time, they're going to make more complex resources, but force you to sort of choose a little bit more, because then that means you have to trade with other people. So it's all really about these. Soccerverse is all about trading players and this sort of stuff. And so that blockchain is a sort of database technology that is decentralized and everyone shares. The games that are going to work really well on it are games where people are having to share and trade stuff. I mean, because that's what the technology is. And I guess we see that to some degree with MMORPGs, but they're really big and horrible to make. So there's not no successful ones of those on Web3 at the moment. But clearly that will be something that will be happening. Eve Frontier is sort of an example of that. So I think, I have a lot of time for what they've done with Craftworld, and looking forward to it going live on Ronin.
Good. Right, finally then, let's talk Pudgy Party. Is this going to be the next 100 million user game in Web3?
Yeah, so again, not quite sure what I can say about this. I did talk to John Linden from Mythical Games, who has developed Pudgy Party, and I also spoke to Luca Netz, who is the CEO of Igloo Inc., who's the company behind Pudgy Penguins. He is Mr. Pudgy Penguins. And that's sort of interesting. There's a lot of stuff going on with Pudgy Penguins. So obviously, there's the NFTs been out there and doing super well. The Pudgy token, not the Pudgy token, the Pengu token, sort of meme coin is going to look like it's going to hit all-time highs again fairly soon. Not quite there yet. Yeah, they're doing weird stuff like they're announcing an ETF, so a financial sort of wrapper that people can buy shares in the real world, not the blockchain world. You can put this, if they get it approved, people can put this in their pension. I wouldn't recommend that, but it's a collection of Pudgy tokens and Pudgy Penguin NFTs. That's what you're buying a share of in the fiat world. So a lot of stuff going on there. And one of the things they're doing is this Pudgy Party game, which is like a sort of Fall Guys, Stumble Guys type game. It is actually out in the UK. Surprisingly, they're doing some testing there. So you can actually, if you're in the UK, download it and play it. I mean, it's fairly functional. It's say like a version of sort of Fall Guys, although it has a bit more combat. And what you're doing really is you're playing the game for fun, knocking people out of the way, trying to get to the number one position, and then you're unlocking different Pudgy Penguins, and they all have obviously different looks, and they all have different sort of attributes, so sort of different moves, different sort of attack moves and stuff like that. It's obviously not a combat game from that point of view. It's sort of quite humorous and fun. And there is a whole, but what can I say about this? So the current version that's out there is just a Web 2 game, but there will be Web 3 stuff. I don't know what that is, but they just haven't. That's not released at the moment. So but they are very, as you say, they're very bullish. I mean, I spoke to John quite a few times, and he's very sort of very committed now to this 100 million sort of user number by the end of, I think, next year. He's saying, and Luca, to be fair, says their whole goal is to take Pudgy Penguins, as being the sort of crypto sort of meme or whatever, to take that outside of crypto. So they really want sort of this global presence. They think games are one of the ways. He says basically we need to do a games TV series or movies. I assume they are talking to people about TV series and movies, but they take much longer to do than games. So games is sort of the first thing, and the one thing he is sort of a genius at is is sort of building community and understanding how you build community and what what deals you do. Obviously, famously, they were the first people to do plushies in Walmart. It wasn't that you couldn't. No other blockchain project could have put plushies in Walmart. As far as I've never taken a project and put plushies in Walmart, but as far as people who have done that tell me it's not actually that difficult. But he was the first one to do it. So, and obviously you can't just take any old things and put them in Walmart. But, why didn't Sky Mavis put axes in Walmart? I mean, they clearly had the money to do it, but they didn't, and Luca, he has that sort of brain. So it's interesting. I know sort of games are difficult. It's really difficult to get, even if that game does 10 million, I wouldn't say I'd be surprised, but that would be, I would count that as a success if they could get 10 million people playing that game. But they're running, multi-billion pound industries, and that's why they have the vision of 100 million. So, so I guess we'll see how that sort of stuff plays out. And as I say, as a game, it's good. It's sort of functional, but I think it's one part of a whole bunch of other stuff that they're sort of looking to do at the same time, and we will see.
You can definitely see the IP kind of working as a Minions or Pokemon type.
Well, it is. I mean, I think
movies or whatnot, and that then actually boosting like the game side of things, but that the game might not immediately be the breakout that they're hoping.
Yeah, I think you're right. If all they were doing was a game, you go probably not going to work. But obviously, the fact that how many NFT collections could Luca have bought? I mean, obviously there was, I can't really remember. There was the sup ducks and the dead heads and the dead fellas and there were tons and tons and tons of them. But Pudgy penguins always had a bit of a cachet. It's obviously the alliteration's nice. Penguins are one of those animals that people just go, oh, penguin, love penguins. But so there was he obviously very quickly understood that this is something that could scale, and it is interesting. The obvious comparison, I did try and ask him about it, but obviously he's not so stupid to answer my questions on that point. I did say sort of compared to sort of Bored Apes, which was the leader of raising all that money, and everyone Bored Apes are super cool, and everyone's getting tattoos of Bored Apes, and all this crazy stuff we did around Bored Ape NFTs, and you just feel like they don't have a vision. They've sort of gone through various things, and they've expanded and they've contracted, and they're trying to do games, but sort of all they're doing is games. That's their metaverse is their thing. They're not. They put all their eggs in one basket in a way that sort of Pudgy penguins, I think, will be much more nimble and just if you have young children, a Bored Ape doesn't appeal in the same way as a Pudgy penguin does it? I mean, a Bored Ape is a sort of a cool hipster thing, which just isn't mass market in the same way. So.
No, I think you're right there. Good. And on that note, let's finish off. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Bye bye.